Thousands of gun-carrying supporters of the Second Amendment protested in Virginia's capital against what they see as radical changes.
This common sense legislation does not violate the Second Amendment.
But a long list of gun restrictions promoted by the governor and a Democrat legislature has triggered a movement across Virginia.
That law-abiding gun owners will not go quietly into the night.
This week, a whole new kind of sanctuary city.
Saber B doesn't like to take chances.
Where the water comes in from the street into my home, I have a filter there. I have a point of use filter here, and then I filter that water into these pitchers.
So you triple filter it.
Newark is the largest city in New Jersey, but like Flint, Michigan, Newark has a big problem with lead in the water.
This isn't just a Newark problem, this is a national problem.
Some of the examples of loserthink are people using analogies to predict. Hey, my cat has markings under its snout that looks like Hitler's mustache, so my cat's going to invade Poland. It doesn't work that way.
You might know Scott Adams as the cartoonist who created the beloved Dilbert comic strip. Today, he talks about his book Loserthink and how you can avoid it.
Welcome to Full Measure. I'm Cheryl Atkinson. We begin with an epic constitutional battle in Virginia that's drawing national attention. Inside of 2 months, nearly every county in the state has passed new measures supporting constitutional gun rights. The effort culminated with a massive, peaceful rally at the state capitol this past week, where the governor declared a state of emergency and warned there could be violence. We investigate what triggered a movement that is now being watched by both sides across the U.S.
It's time to stand up, fight back.
USA! 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 USA!
This was the scene as thousands of gun rights advocates turned out for one of the biggest rallies in memory in Richmond, Virginia's capital.
North, North, out! North, North, out! North, North, out!
Governor Ralph Northam declared a state of emergency in advance and temporarily banned guns on Capitol grounds. But outside the perimeter, thousands peacefully filled the streets, many of them armed. The protests were triggered by a political sea change in the Old Dominion state. Democrats have just taken over the majority in both the Virginia Senate and the House of Delegates for the first time in more than 20 years.
Members will receive the governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Together with Governor Ralph Northam, also a Democrat, they've promised one of the biggest single packages of new gun restrictions anyone can recall. It's popular among gun control advocates, but opponents say it raises constitutional concerns and worry the government could go so far as to confiscate legally purchased firearms.
USA! USA!
To understand the massive backlash here, it helps to understand how Virginians pride themselves on their independence, dating back to when the state was the largest and most populated of the original colonies. It played a major role in the breakaway from the British and determining guarantees under a new American Constitution and Bill of Rights, which includes the right to bear arms. History was in the forefront at a meeting in Stafford County, Virginia, called to fight the new gun restrictions.
Stafford claims the greatest American of all, George Washington.
George Washington moved here with his family in 1738 when he was 6 years old.
2,000 citizens on their own have come out here at night to declare the sacrosanct rights which they were born with.
Stafford County is in a wave of Virginia localities that have held overflow crowd emergency meetings to declare themselves Second Amendment sanctuary cities or constitutional havens.
As long as I am on the board with you, we will partner with the Sheriff Decatur, who's in the audience, and that Stafford residents never, ever have to worry about our police going to their door to confiscate their weapons of good, honest, law-abiding citizens.
That law-abiding gun owners will not go quietly into the night, and we will not sit idly by as we watch the governor subvert a government of the people, by the people, and for the people.
the gall of those men to even hint or suggest of calling out the National Guard to enforce some of these crazy ideas that they have. And I'll say, hey, Ralphie, have you looked at what the demographics of our National Guard are? They're not coming to get us. They're coming to get you.
Tally the vote. Motion passes 7-0.
New proposed state laws have included bans on assault weapons, silencers, and high-capacity ammunition magazines, raising the age to buy a gun from 18 to 21, a limit of one handgun purchase a month, an expanded definition of assault weapons, owning or transporting one would be a felony, banning private indoor gun ranges, and red flag laws where guns can be temporarily confiscated from people exhibiting dangerous behavior that presents an immediate threat. One draft bill would have outlawed some now legal guns, redefining them as assault weapons, making millions of Virginians felons overnight, according to the National Rifle Association. The governor has since said current owners could keep their guns as long as they register them with the government. Since November 6th, 130 Virginia counties, towns, and cities have passed pro-Second Amendment legislation. That includes 91 out of 95 of Virginia's counties. We headed to Virginia Beach the night of their special meeting. It's where a disgruntled city employee named Dwayne Craddock shot and killed 12 people in a mass shooting last May.
Shots fired, second floor.
It's about an hour before the meeting here in Virginia Beach, and there's already a huge line. The vast majority of the people waiting are wearing these orange stickers, Guns Save Lives, indicating they are pro-gun rights.
I know that if anybody is going to get guns taken away from them, it's going to be people who have them legally, because that's the only ones that have it on record. So I don't think that's right.
Virginia Beach Councilmember Jim Wood is one of the sponsors of the pro-gun rights measure. What does it say?
It says we are encouraging the General Assembly to uphold the Constitution and to take no action that infringes on the Second Amendment.
And what would be the net impact if that's approved?
Well, I think it's part of an overall impact that's going around the entire state where people are expressing their opinion on this and in a peaceful manner.
Like the rest of Virginia's local meetings, gun control advocates are, for the most part, staying home. We found only one person on the other side in line.
Obviously, what we're doing isn't working. If we're having mass shootings or the amount of gun violence that we already have, we still need to work on it, not just say, well, we can't do anything because it's an amendment.
And by the authority vested in me as mayor of the city of Virginia Beach, I hereby call a special session of the Virginia Beach City Council.
By the time the meeting started, there were so many people they set up a TV monitor on the lawn outside. They, too, passed their gun rights measure.
By a vote of 6-4, you have adopted the resolution.
Neither Governor Northam nor top Democratic legislators responded to our interview requests. The governor recently addressed the movement to fight his new gun laws in his annual State of the Commonwealth address.
It's clear that a majority of Virginians support these measures, and so do a majority of you. I ask all Virginians to refrain from promoting fear and intimidation. I want to reiterate, this common sense legislation does not violate the Second Amendment. No one is calling out the National Guard. No one is cutting off your electricity or turning off the internet. No one is going door to door to confiscate guns. These laws are intended to keep Virginians safe, period. It is time to act.
No matter what local ordinances have been passed, Virginia's Attorney General promises new gun laws will be enforced. Gun rights advocates insist they'll protect their constitutional rights. New gun restrictions are being proposed right now in other states, including Minnesota, Nebraska, Indiana, Rhode Island, Arizona, Georgia, Alabama, and Washington State. Ahead on Full Measure, you've heard about the water crisis in Flint, Michigan, but it didn't start or end there. We investigate the lead problems happening all over America next. Mention the city Flint, Michigan, and many remember a city water system dangerously contaminated with lead and a government response that failed residents. But what you may not know is cities in every state are grappling with water safety problems, some worse than Flint. Scott Thuman reports from one such place, Newark, New Jersey, where there are national implications.
Saber B doesn't like to take chances. The filter on her kitchen faucet, just one element of a complex defense she's designed to get the cleanest water she can.
Where the water comes in from the street into my home, I have a filter there. I have a point of use filter here, and then I filter that water into these pitchers.
So you triple filter it?
I triple filter the water, yeah.
You don't believe that just one is enough?
Absolutely not.
Her home, one of the thousands in this city affected by a crisis in the water system caused by dangerously high levels of lead. In the shadow of America's financial capital and the gleaming towers of Lower Manhattan, Newark is the largest city in New Jersey. The old decaying infrastructure meant it has long had a lead problem. But back in 2017, the levels in parts of the water system spiked.
Like most water crises, it started out with good intentions. They tried to change their water chemistry to reduce the amount of carcinogens that are present to meet EPA regulations, and it backfired because that change, lowering the pH, caused lead to come off the pipes and contaminate the water supply.
Mark Edwards is a professor of civil engineering at Virginia Tech. He's been working on the problem of lead in water for more than 30 years. Edwards is best known as the scientist who brought national attention to the city of Flint, Michigan, when its lead levels rose dramatically in 2014 and 2015.
The two are similar in that the lead levels that were in the water were very high. Actually, Newark's were slightly higher than Flint and probably affected a bigger population.
Lead and water have been associated for millennia. The Romans used it for pipes and roofs, and the English word plumber comes from the Latin word for lead. But lead's dangers have also been understood for a long time. There's no safe level for it in the human body. In children, it can slow growth and cause learning problems.
It lasts forever. It bends. If there's frost, they would never have to replace it and it doesn't leak. It's really the greatest plumbing material, except for the fact that it poisons and kills people.
In the U.S., lead was widely used in the 19th century, but concern about health effects encouraged some cities to restrict it in the 1920s. It wasn't until 1971 that lead in paint was outlawed. Lead pipes were finally banned in 1986. With about 13 million lead service lines nationally, Newark and Flint aren't exceptions. There are towns and cities all across the U.S. with potentially similar problems. In Newark, as in Flint, Saber says city leaders began by downplaying the problem.
They told people that keep calm and carry on. There's no problem here. There's nothing to see here. The water's not poisoned. You're fine.
In April of 2018, the city posted this notice on its website saying the water was safe to drink and was not contaminated. But that headline isn't accurate. Test results published by the city itself showed lead levels in some homes well above the federal action level.
The truth at some point was that the water is unsafe to drink, right?
The truth at some point, if you had a lead service line from your house, then there's a possibility that lead may have been leaching into your house water system if you had a lead service line. Everybody in the city of Newark don't have a lead service line.
Kareem Adeem, the acting head of water and sewer for the city of Newark, says the city has responded well, even if communication could have been better.
What would you have said differently?
Just make it, the terms that we have to use at times when we're explaining something, everybody don't comprehend them. They don't understand it. You know, you get bogged down in a 30 pages of explaining what happened. We need to just straightforward. this is what's going on, this is what we plan to do.
The plan began with free water filters and starting slowly to replace old lead pipes, work that was projected to take a decade. Then in August last year, a breakthrough. The city got $120 million from the county, and it's now aiming to replace all lead service lines in just 30 months. One of the biggest and fastest pipe replacement programs ever in the U.S.
We're replacing a little over 85 lead service lines a day. We just awarded 2 more contractors on January the 2nd. We're hoping to boost that number up to about 100 a day by the end of the month.
This isn't just a Newark problem. This is a
national
national problem. You're suggesting replace all the lead pipes everywhere.
Remove all the lead pipes everywhere, upgrade the water and sewer infrastructure. This is the United States of America, the richest country in the world. We can do it. We're doing it right now in Newark. We're replacing lead service pipes. So if the Newark can do it, the country can do it.
Even some of the city's strongest critics agree the response is now moving faster than they could have ever expected. But for Saber, it's forever changed how she feels about water.
After they replace these lines, how will you feel?
As long as I have some test results, as long as science supports it, I am fine with it. I'd still be filtering my water. Oh, from here on out, for the rest of my life, wherever I go, I'm going to have a water filtration system wherever I live, right? Because this is terrifying. Terrifying.
So how big of a problem is this across the country?
Well, the amount of lead in our daily lives is down dramatically over the past few decades, and that's thanks in part to bans on lead in items like gasoline or paint, and yes, pipes. But there are cities and towns all across the country with literally millions of these lead pipe lines that need to be replaced. And they're realizing they need to do that sooner rather than later, because even the smallest change in the chemistry of that water can cause, like in Newark or Flint, for those lead pipes to leach.
Great information. Thanks, Scott. Just ahead on Full Measure, stop thinking like a loser. Scott Adams, creator of the Dilbert comic strip, is here to tell us how to do that. Most anyone who's worked in an office setting with cubicles and an idiot boss can relate to the comic strip Dilbert, created by Scott Adams. Now Adams has some advice for all of us in a new book about how to get outside our bubble and become a respected thinker. The book is Loser Think: How Untrained Brains Are Ruining America. Lisa Fletcher sat down with Adams in California.
Describe the meaning of the title.
So loser think is a word I made up, and it refers to the fact that we all have these blank spots in our mental model. So for example, if you'd never been an economist, you might not know how they think about things, or how scientists do, or psychologists, historians, artists. I'm not saying that some people are smart and some people are not smart. Nothing to do with that. It's just whether you've been exposed to the way people think in the different domains. Some of the examples of loser think are people using analogies to predict. Hey, this is my exaggerated example. Hey, my cat has markings under its snout that looks like Hitler's mustache, so my cat's going to invade Poland. It doesn't work that way. Now you say, okay, that's a stupid example because nobody would think that way. But then you look at the news, and people are saying, hey, President Trump is criticizing the press. Who else does that? Dictators. Next thing you know, he's going full dictator. But it doesn't really work that way, because that makes you think past the sale. The sale is, has the press reached a point where having your leader criticize them is actually what you would want? I would argue yes. We've reached that point where he's got free speech, they've got free speech, he can say what he wants, because they've crossed a line in many cases. So that's an example. Don't use analogies to make predictions.
Is loser think a new phenomenon unlocked by social media, or is this something we've been dealing with for forever?
We've dealt with it forever, but it seems more because of social media. And I talk about the technological change that changed everything. It ruined everything, really. And it was the ability for the media, social media and the news, to measure with precision who's clicking what. Fake news will get more clicks than real news. So the business model forces us into a state of sort of fight or flight. Our bodies are all cranked up, our hair's on fire over everything.
If you had to pick out one favorite section or chapter of the book, what is it?
Well, I like the part about ego. So I talk about how to get out of ego jail. Now, the mistake is to think of your ego as who you are. Oh, my ego is me. I'm going to protect it. That is pure loser think. The trick is that if you put yourself in the position where you do embarrass yourself intentionally, give a speech, maybe you're not that prepared, ask somebody out, you get turned down, take it all and just wake up the next morning and see if your coffee tastes the same. It does.
All right. So you are the creator of one of the most successful comic strips of all time, beloved Dilbert. Can you tell us something that maybe your audience and your fans didn't know or doesn't know about Dilbert?
All right, here's a little trivia. Dogbert's original name was not Dogbert. He was the companion to Dilbert, and before he was syndicated, his name was Dildog. And I think you know why I changed it. Yeah. So that's a little trivia that some people know, but not too many.
And now you know too. One more piece of advice from Adams to avoid loser think. Don't try to read minds. Adams says we too often incorrectly assume what other people are thinking. Next on Full Measure, an update to our Follow the Money reporting about tax money spent on hurricane relief in Puerto Rico. New questions about where the aid ended up. An update to our Follow the Money investigations into U.S. tax money committed to Puerto Rico after devastating hurricanes blamed for nearly 3,000 deaths. This past week, the governor of Puerto Rico fired the island's emergency management director. That after video surfaced of a warehouse with undistributed hurricane relief supplies dating back to 2017. That includes thousands of cases of water. Earlier this season, we tracked the U.S. tax money spent on hurricane relief, some of it lost to waste and fraud. By our count, $91 billion in U.S. tax money was earmarked for recovery. Of that amount, we found that the island has only received about $14 billion. The biggest single chunk, $5 billion, was spent fixing the electric system, which was already failing before the hurricane. Next week on Full Measure, we're just 1 week away from the first big vote of the 2020 presidential election. Scott Thurman hits the campaign trail in Iowa, where Democrats are making their final pitches for votes. Until then, thanks for watching. See you next week.